right, everybody, welcome back. We are in the garage. We got some more stuff to work on over here. Last thing I did was the control arms, and I've got a new piece to the puzzle that I need to get ready. So we're gonna dive into this. I'm gonna show you what it is. You can probably make it out from here, but I got something else back there too. So let's check these things out. On the last episode, we went through my front lower control arms for the EG/DC subframe. I had upgraded all the bushings to energy polyurethane suspension bushings, and these things came out awesome. Can't wait to get this all set up together. The next thing I got was a subframe, right? I got this from a buddy of mine. The subframe is freaking perfect. He had it powder coated. It was a spare that he had, so he was kind enough to sell it to me. Everything was powder coated. These were off of it, so I had bought new hardware for here, so that's nice new stuff. And yeah, so this is my EG subframe or DC subframe, whatever you want to call it. Nice painted satin black, but I didn't have this power steering rack. Now this rack I need because obviously I didn't have one with this subframe. So now this power steering rack needs to be modified. I don't have power steering. So today I'm gonna dive into how I take a power steering rack and turn it into a manual operating rack. There's a few ways to do this. What I do, I know a few other friends do as well. This thing works out great. We're gonna go into it step by step, how I navigate it, how I get through it. Again, some ways that I do things may not be the same way others may do them, but I'm gonna show you how I get this done. Now, first things first, I don't like dirty stuff, so I gotta clean this up. I'm gonna get a rag. We're gonna clean this up. I'm gonna take these boots off. We're gonna take the inner tie rods off, and then we'll get started. All right, so first thing I did was I took the metal strap off. I just split one end of it and then pulled it out. All right, easy enough. Next, you take a flathead screwdriver. See if I could do this with one hand. Might be a pain in the butt. Either way, you guys get the idea. Push this in here and then pry this part of the boot off. One part that not many people speak of with these boots is these rings at the end, right? Easiest thing that I've found for me is pry one end of the ring off, and it's basically a little spring, so it goes around in a coil. Let's see if I can find the other end of it. Right there, that'll be the easiest part. You find the start of it, lift it up and over the edge, all right, and then you just go around. Keep going, keep going. Now, if you don't want to use these again, you can cut them. I'm gonna end up using a zip tie instead of this, just for ease of installation, because you can see this is a pain in the ass. And if I had to do this at the racetrack, this will be a pain to do under the car and on my back. So it's easier for me just to put a zip tie in there and get this out. All right, got the ring off. All right, gonna set it aside with the other one and the other boot. Again, just gonna pry this off. See, just like that. And then I can pull this boot off of here, and then I need to take off the outer tie rods. All right, they sell tools for this. I just have a really big set of channel logs that I'm gonna grab and throw on there. All right, old Betty over here. All right, I can grab really easy with this. Just got to make sure I have a way to hold the rack, and then I'm good to go. Okay, both inner tie rods are out. I've got almost a bare rack. These hoses right here are the breather for these two bellows here, so they connect here to allow air to move from side to side. We don't need those anymore, so I can turn these over and pull these out. All right, it's just clipped on from the top. All right, so I can open up this clip right here, you see that? And I can take it off of the hard line and pull the rubber hose itself out. Got a small screwdriver. Unclip it right here like that, and then again right here. Lift it, unclip it. I try to save these things. I don't ever plan on using this again, but the parts for these cars are getting so hard to find that I don't know if I'll need it one day or one of my friends will need it or whatever. So either way, now that that's done, I am going to disconnect all these hard lines. These hard lines have to come off. So here, 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 and here. Hopefully these don't give me a hard time. Hard lines have been removed. These actually came out pretty easy, which was nice. Now, I want you guys to understand, in the middle here, somewhere in here, there is a piston. And when I say piston, imagine that this is the rack that goes across, right? So every time I put fluid in here, based off of how I'm turning, it puts fluid into either this side or this side, helping to push the piston in either direction. So let's say I put fluid into this side, it's going to move the rack this way, right, to help turn your wheel in either direction. So if I turn this piece here now, right, I may get fluid coming out of these holes. So I want you guys to be very careful when you take these out, because sometimes it comes out kind of pressurized. I'm going to do it slow. Let's see if I get anything. I don't know the status of this rack or the last time it had fluid in it. It looks pretty empty. Yeah, it seems like it's pretty empty. All right, cool. I just turned it all the way over. As you can see, the thing's fully extended now. But yeah, just be mindful. If this was a freshly used rack, there will be oil in here. So anytime you turn this here, right, the pinion gear itself, it may push oil out of either one of these. So just be careful. You don't want to end up with a face full of oil. Now I'm ready to remove the pinion part of this rack, right? So I got to loosen this 12mm head bolt, this 12mm head bolt. I've also went ahead and cracked this nut loose, right? You don't loosen it from here. You actually have to crack this larger nut loose. So I just cracked that loose because I may need to back this off, and I'll show you guys later why. So I already got these pretty loose. Let's take this one off and the front one off. So what's going to happen here, for those of you who are unfamiliar with this piece at the top that I'm removing now has a gear attached to this vertical shaft, right? And every time you turn the steering wheel, the steering column turns with it, and that turns the rack, right? You see? I just took those screws out so the whole thing turns. But every time you turn the steering wheel, this is what turns. And then in turns, the rack itself will go left or right. So now I want to remove this. See how it doesn't necessarily just pull out easy? That's where loosening this large nut in the back, and then potentially now even loosening this part is going to come in handy. So I loosen this now. Just a little bit, maybe like a quarter turn. And now let's see if I can pull this piece out. Come on. Might need two hands. All right, little pressure and it comes right out. So now you can see how this vertical part, if I turn it, that gear at the bottom turns. So once that gear at the bottom turns, it's going to move the shaft left or right. Now, for now, I'm just going to set this whole piece aside. And now I want to remove this section completely. All right, so I'm going to back this whole piece out. Take this whole piece out. All right, and there's a spring behind it. So I'm going to set all of this stuff aside, that spring there, and then if you look inside, there's more. So I'm going to get a needle nose plier, and I want to take that whole piece out. Got my needle nose plier. Gonna reach in here to this part and pull the whole thing out. What comes out is this guiding collar, or this guiding piston, or this slide piston, whatever you want to call it. So the rack, or this shaft, is guided along this piece with this spring that I just took out. So I'm going to keep all of this stuff together. We'll talk about that piece a little later on reassembly. So now I'm left with a bare rack, right? No pinion gear, just the rack. So what I want to do now is get the rack gear itself out, right? So this whole shaft I want to take out. In order for me to do that, this large nut at the end needs to be removed. For me to remove this nut, I have to drill out this little pin right here. So the way they keep this nut from backing out is by spiking it or punching it so the threads hold on, are held on to that punch. So I'm going to take a drill bit, drill that piece out, and then we'll take this big nut out. All right, so now I don't want to drill all the way through, right? Just enough to get rid of that beveled section that was pushed in, or that countersunk, not countersunk, but like center punched section. So now I'm going to get my socket to take this off. 36 mil, that it is. Got the 36 mil on there. If you know me, you know I don't like to use impact guns, but for this thing I always use it. Just makes it that much easier. See how all that oil came out of here? Let's cover this up, these two holes. All right, drilled out. Got it. Big nut is off of the end. And if you can see inside, there is the seal that keeps all the fluid inside this rack. So now what I need to do is get that seal out. The way I do it is a little different from others. I don't have certain seal pullers, nor do I want to drill a screw into it and pull it out. So what I do is I thread a long bolt onto this end over here. Got my long bolt. This is just a bolt that would be used for an engine mount on one of our Civics or Integras. So I'm going to thread this in a nice bit, maybe half of the amount of threads, or until it starts turning the whole shaft. And then I'm going to put a socket at the end of this, because what I want to end up doing is taking this rack, holding it straight up. Let's see if I get any fluid out of here. Hope I don't. I got a little bit. And you see how much space is left there? The piston has now passed this hole, and I'm starting to build up air pressure in here. So my goal is to basically spike this piece down as hard as I can and have the air pressure push the seal that's up here out. Let's see if I can get a better angle to make it make sense. Quick note here. Whatever bolt you decide to use on one end to push this shaft out, make sure it clears this side of the rack. And what I mean is, when you have the bolt going through, make sure that the flange of it, right, can fit through easily, right? Obviously this is going to be centered because that shaft is centered, but you want to make sure that this fits in. Because if it doesn't, what's going to happen is you're going to start hitting the edges, right? You don't want to hit the edges, because then you start beveling things and things get messed up. All right, same thing with the socket that you're going to use. Right, see, I used this socket. You want to make sure that the socket fits in nice and smooth with plenty of space to make its way through. To take this bolt, right, with this socket And what I want to do is, like I said, as this shaft moves in, the piston that's in here is sliding up. It's going to pass this hole right here, and now I'm going to have air pressure building up in this area here. So I'm going to try to use that pressure to push out the piston. Whoops! That thing went flying. Now, before I continue, there's got to be a better way to do this. What I did was pretty dangerous, right? I don't like to do hacky type of work, but I honestly don't know another way to get that seal out without damaging it. So this is what's worked for me in the past. I've done this on multiple racks. It's been a while since I've done my last one, so maybe I had something in place. Maybe you get like a cup or something, put it over the top to make sure that the seal doesn't go flying. I definitely should have had eye protection and ear protection on. So I'm just taking a minute here to go over that stuff with you, just because I want you guys to be safe. I don't want anybody getting hurt. So yeah, think twice before you do things, because I didn't. I was in a rush, and that's how things go wrong. This could have ended up a lot worse. Thankfully, my head was off to the side, and it wasn't over the shaft itself, because if that thing coming out with that force would have hit me in the head, I don't think it would have knocked me out, maybe, but it wouldn't have felt good, and I don't want to hit myself with stuff like that. So yeah, just be safe. I always say it at the end of my videos: be well, stay safe. And what I just did wasn't safe. So learn from my mistakes. Try to come up with something that can protect you better. So the seal is out, right? When you get the seal out, in this case, there's a little spring that goes around the inside that came off of mine. We can just push that spring back in here, and everything will work out just fine. Now we put this spring back into the seal. Just got to get it into this little groove right here. See if I can do this with one hand. That's it. Spring is in. So you see the spring goes all the way around that part of the seal. The goal here of doing all of that was to get this shaft completely out of the rack, because this is the piston that I was talking about. I need to remove this piston, so I have to cut this whole thing off. And you can tell it's pretty grimy in there. Look at that. Not very nice looking. So I got to cut this off. But as always, I'm going to clean this stuff up first. We're going to put the bare rack aside. Come on. Right. We'll put the bare hollow rack aside. And then I'll get to cutting this piston off. I've got the rack housing left over to the side. I've got the shaft over here by itself. This is basically what I'm doing. So this seal right here is what seals this piston against the walls of that rack housing, right? Now, I already cut it, but you see the angle that I cut it at? All right, so all I did was take a razor blade and I just cut it at an angle like this, right? This was really soft to cut. It's basically a little piece of rubber. That's all it is. So now I want to take a hacksaw that I have and I want to cut at the same angle. Actually, first I'm probably going to pop this O-ring out, right? And then I'm going to get the hacksaw and I'm going to cut at this angle like this. I don't want to go too far. I want to go just enough to nick this part of the piston. All right, so I do have to saw quite a bit, but I don't want to go too far to where I nick or I cut into the shaft itself. So this side does not have that little lip on it. The other side does. All right, so I'm going to cut this just enough so I can wedge a screwdriver into the cut, hammer it, and then it should be enough to split it. And once I split it, I can slide it off the shaft of the rack. Alright, the piston has been cut. Now that I spread it, it took a little bit of work, but we got it out. And now I have just the rack by itself. Right, everything is in good shape. Let's just clean this little bit off right here. Take a look. The rack is nice and in good shape. I nicked it ever so slightly, but that's fine. This will work out a-okay. So now I can start looking at reassembly. So everything's been disassembled. I got the piston off of the rack. Before I start reassembly, I'm actually going to clean this up a lot more. Going to take a brass wire brush to this, clean this up as best as I can, mask off some stuff, paint this. Obviously, I got a little bit of rust here I got to fix, some little scratches here. So I'm going to clean this up and probably paint this as well. But yeah, I'm going to clean this up, paint it before I start reassembly. While that thing's drying, let's take a look at this pinion gear. All right, I've got a 21mm socket here. I just dropped the gear inside. I want to get some snap ring pliers and open up this ring and take this section out, this valve section. All right, so once I take this out, it's going to expose the next step that I need to do to this gear. Now, let me make something clear. I have done this in the past without this step that I'm about to show you, and it's worked perfectly fine. What I'm about to show you is to remove a marginal, and I mean marginal, very small amount of play in the pinion gear that you may get when you depower the rack. Now, like I said, my current rack and pinion, I have an EK rack with an Integra pinion gear, and I never did what I'm about to show you to it. And honestly, I had zero issues with it. It's run fine. I have almost no play, if any, in my steering column or my steering wheel, and it worked fine. But I don't want to open this again, so I'm just gonna do this now. Could I run this like this? Absolutely. I could run it just like this, but the 100% proper way to do it would be to take these pieces off and weld something here, which I'm going to show you now. So I've got the snap ring off. All right, you need a set of snap ring pliers. Spread the ring and lift it up and over. So I'll leave the ring right over here. And now I got to get this set of valves off. Lift up, pull it all the way up, set that aside. And this seal we can set aside for now as well. Okay, so with that valve set off, this collar or actual bearing race is what you're going to weld to the shaft of the pinion gear. So the whole point of welding that is to prevent any possible side to side or rotational type of play from this bearing race to the shaft itself. So they basically make it one piece. I've been very fortunate. I've had my old setup with all of these valves. Well, this valve setup still on it, the seal and everything else, and I've been okay with it. So I'm going to leave everything together. I am not going to weld it. What I'm going to do is clean this out, repack this with some Redline CV2 grease, and then same thing with this bearing in here, that needle bearing. All right, I've got all my components over here. I've already packed the rack bearing, the pinion bearing with Redline CV2. That's spinning nice and smooth. I've packed the bearing for the housing with CV2 as well. Now I'm going to reassemble. So in order for me to reassemble, again, just the washer goes on top here. The seal goes in here. And then this assembly goes back onto the pinion shaft. But there's this little notch. This notch has to be lined up with this groove in that bearing race that you would normally weld, that most guys would weld. So if you look, I go all the way around. There's only one spot for that pin to line up with. So drop this back in there, line that pin up. Sorry guys, this is what I get. Line the pin up and drop it down. Down she goes. Now, last thing I have to do is set the C-clip back in place. So I take my snap ring pliers, open it, drop it all the way down onto here as far as I can. And then we're going to give it a little push with a screwdriver and you'll hear it click into place. That's one side. Both sides are in. If you want to confirm both sides are in, you can take a look at the ring and see that it's in the groove. All right, so now I'm just going to put a little lube on this because this ends up rotating inside here. Put a little bit along here. And then a little bit on the inside of this housing. Keep this nice and lubricated. Not that I need to put oil through here, but now there's going to be no oil in here at all. No power steering fluid, no nothing. So if I put that bearing grease there, it will help keep that area completely lubricated and prevent issues in the future. So now put the cap over the top, slide her in, and that's it. Good to go. This rotates real nice. Everything's nice and lubricated. Now we move on to setting the rest of the rack back up. Now we're gonna put it back together. This thing is looking nice, all painted, fresh, clean, ready for reassembly. So I've got the rack gear over here, the seal that was on this end that almost took out my head, and then the cap for the end. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna push the seal in a little bit. All right, so I've got the hole for the seal in here. Let's take this. Let's try to just push this in enough. Whoops. Push this in just enough. And then what happens is, as this threads in, it pushes the seal in the rest of the way as far as it needs to go. So it doesn't need to go any further than what this piece threads into the rack. So I'm going to thread all of this together. Then I am going to, as well as I can, fill this area with grease. All right, this whole area, you can see I cleaned out most of it. Some of it's still there. Pack it in. Well, not pack it in completely flat, but enough for me to get the shaft through it, because I'm going to put the shaft in from this angle. And then I'm going to put more grease in here in order to lubricate the gears. Let's take a look. Thread this back in. What I always like to do is put a little grease on the threads before I do this. Just a me thing. You don't have to do this. All right, threads are greased. I'm gonna thread this in. Get my 36mm socket and tighten that down. All right, remember, in doing so, it's pushing the seal the rest of the way in. All right, that is there. Let's hold this down here. All right, that piece is in. Now I'm gonna throw some gloves on. Take some Redline CV2 and put it in this area of the rack, right, like I just showed you. Let's lubricate this up pretty nice and smooth. So I have to ride everything off of this. But you start with loading this shaft in from this side. feel it move through one, and I've got through the second seal. Now, before I do that, I'm going to take this rack and I'm going to load this whole area here with grease. Right, this whole area here with the threads, just going to cake that sucker with grease. So threads get caked. Make sure I fill in all the gears of them. This whole area gets caked with some nice grease on it, because this ultimately is what's going to be driven by the pinion gear. All right, so now I can push this in here. Great. Now with the excess that I have on this finger here, I'm going to put it all over these gears for the pinion. Fill this up nice, pack the gears up real nice, and then I'm going to set this aside. Let's clean this off. Okay, now I can lift this, and like I said, I want to pack these areas with grease. So there and here, both of them, I want to pack them up nice with grease. And now I want to insert the pinion gear, but first I got to make sure that this drive gear is in the correct position. Right? So if the pinion gear is going in this way, right, I want to make sure that the gear itself is not going to be in the wrong position. So it's going to end up being a little bit at an angle like that. Right here. There we go. So the gear falls into place. Now I can, actually I forgot something. Dummy me, silly. Take this back out. I have to put this O-ring in here at the top, and I have to put this washer on the bottom right down here. Right, these all came out when we first put this thing together. So we put this in here, and that's all set up. And now I move on to the rear section over here. I'm gonna put a little more grease in there, and I'll show you why. Okay, so in here is where this guide piece goes. So the rack, right, the long shaft rides across this piece. Now this is already a good type of material that shouldn't wear, but I want to keep as much grease in there as possible. That way I have no issues. Put some on here to make sure it's nice and lubricated. And then we'll take another chunk and drop it in there. All right, off we go. Chunk is dropped off. Take any little excess off. My bad, guys. Trying to do this. Look at what I'm doing and not through the camera. I probably should look through the camera though. So anyways, this piece just drops right in. Obviously that curve has to follow the curve of the shaft. So this piece is gonna push in. So we got some grease packing out over here. Let's put some of that back. This piece pushed in, that's good, that's what we needed to do. Then we drop this spring that we took out, put it on top, and then we take this piece and thread it back in over here. But first I want to clean out that area. Not out, but just clean the outside of it before I put that piece on there. There we go. So again, drop that spring in there. Let's throw a little grease in this as well. Everything gets lube. Throw this back together over here. We got the thread started. Just gonna start sending this guy in. Now I start to feel tension from the spring. I'm gonna tighten this up pretty nice. Not all the way, because remember that piece has to keep pressure on the rack. So just want to make sure I have good tension on it. Until it bottoms out, not the big nut, but until this piece bottoms out on the spring and the whole rack starts to turn. And then I'll go back about a quarter turn. Actually, I'm going to make it a half turn. Half turn, because now that spring in there is compressed and that's what's holding the rack in place. Now I can tighten this, and in order for me to do that, I need to hold this end and then get another wrench and tighten here. Okay, nice and tight. All right, guys, the rack is basically put back together, right? We did all the hardware for the pinion side. Now we got to start worrying about the bushings, right? So the bushings need to be updated, right? We don't put old stuff back in these cars, right? We're making these things perfect. So I got new bushings that I'm going to put in there. And what I bought was these energy suspension bushings. It comes with the large round bushing for this part of the rack itself, as well as, I don't know if you could see them, but those smaller circles in there are going to be the inserts for these two parts right here for the rack mount. Now, we need pieces from the old bushings. I'm going to show you those right now. Now, when we took the old bushings out, if you look, I don't know if I could do this with one hand, but there's a sleeve in here, or a collar, however you want to call it, sleeve, collar. All right, you see that collar right there? That collar needs to be put into the new energy bushings. There we go. We're starting to pull this one out. Okay, so the old busted, rusted, and crusted bushings are going to leave, and I've got to put this collar back in with the new energy bushings. And just like we did with the control arms in the last video, we're going to have some lube that has to go onto here as well. So let's get everything set up and then we'll put it together. All right, took some of the energy suspension lube, put it inside each one of the energy suspension bushings. All right along the inside. Put some inside the rack itself on each point on both sides, front and back. So front and back will have some lube in it. Now I can just drop the bushing in here from the front. Drop the bushing in here from the front. Now once the bushing's in, I can just drop the collar right in. 1, 2, and then I'm gonna flip it over and push the back ones on right in. Collars are in, front bushings and, whoops, there it is. Rear bushings are in place. And I bought new hardware for these points right here. The bolts for that from Honda are right here. These are the part numbers. It's 90108 SR3 951. So if we open this up, this will be brand new bolts for right here and here. And then I bought the 2 new bolts for the D bracket as well. That number is 93402 120-08. So this bolt is what holds the bracket right here that holds this part of the this part of the steering rack to the subframe. Since we're speaking about this part of the steering rack, the last part in the kit is this bushing. I am just going to leave this on here for now. All right. This bushing needs a specific D bracket, a bracket that wraps around this piece here and then bolts onto the subframe right here. Unfortunately, I do not have that bracket. I have to order one. So I'm just going to bolt this on here for the time being without that bushing. Without that bracket, and we'll be good to go from there. Right in here. Gotta move this over a little bit, put this through, and we can thread this bolt on in. Nice. The top one goes in nice and smooth. Nice and smooth. And then we can tighten this up. These are 17mm heads. And man, this rack looks fresh on here. Looks so good. Let's grab a 17mm. this is it, complete. I finally got the bracket in, the D bracket for the bushing. This came in, like I said, I used the OEM bolts. And what I did here was I capped off all of the ports for the rack. It's a little dusty, it's been sitting for a bit. But all the ports are capped, right? I've got the two here for where the piston used to be. Those are capped. I've got the two inlets for the hoses that were there, that were capped. And then two of them in the back that are there for the lines for the piston, right? So the rack is done. The subframe is complete. This is ready to go. The last video had the control arms in it. So basically subframe and control arms, good to go. I am super excited with how this came out. Those caps just look so good. I've got the new bellows and inner tie rods to put on, but that's fairly simple. This is exactly what I needed. Guys, that's it. Done. It was a long video, but I think I told you everything you need to know about changing this power steering rack to a manual steering rack. Now, this can be done for the EGs, DCs, EKs. It's all basically the same, right? Now, I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. If I'm available to answer, I will do my best to get you the best answer I can. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in. Cannot thank you guys enough for this support. This is such a huge step in getting the K-swap into my sedan. I am super excited for this. Hope you guys are excited, or at least half as excited as I am. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys on the next one. As always, be well, stay safe, peace out.